Today's meeting is being held by video conference and is also being live streamed online at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. Although we may be meeting in different locations today, the Preservation Board would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. If you are registered to speak at today's meeting, please listen for me to call your name. I will call speakers in the order they appear on the list, and the list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the Toronto Preservation Board at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. Members, the City Clerk has provided all agenda materials on toronto.ca/council. As a reminder, please submit and approve your motions by email, and staff are available at hertpb@toronto.ca to help with motions. At this time, are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you have an interest, please raise your hand or indicate the item number, nature of the interest. Are there any declarations?
Yes, I have one. This is Adam Wynn.
Thank you, Adam. And on what number?
I don't have the number right in front of me, but it's the 214-230 Sherbourne Street site. That came to my attention quite late before this meeting, or sorry, not too long ago before this meeting. That this is, I work for BIA, my day job, and this is one of our member businesses operating under another number company.
Thank you very much, Adam. And just for the clerk, that's PB 22.2.
Yeah. And unfortunately, this is not clear prior to that point in time.
Nope. Thank you very much for bringing it to our attention. Are there any other declarations of interest? All right. Seeing none, we will proceed. May I have a motion to confirm the minutes from our meeting on August 19th, 2024? Thank you, Paul. All those in favor, please. And Adam, a little, are you in favor? Just a little hello.
Sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Are you having a motion to minutes meeting of August? Paul moved it. Are you in favor?
I'm sorry, I still can't hear you. It's cutting in and out.
We have a motion to confirm the minutes from our meeting on August 19th, 2024. Paul moved it. We're just voting right now if it's in favor, and just because you're on your bike, I just need that you're in favor of confirming the minutes. Yes?
Somebody.
I think we have quorum regardless of where Adam is at. Is that correct, Tanya?
That's correct. No, I'm not muted.
So I think right now we'll wait till Adam can take a landline and we can see him. But I think in that case, the motion carries. We were all in favor of it. Moving on to the agenda review. The first item is PB 22.1, 111 and 115 Berkeley Street, alterations to heritage properties and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. There are public speakers registered on this item, so I will hold it. The next item is PB 22.2, 214 to 230 Sherbourne Street, alterations to heritage properties designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. There are public speakers registered on this item, so I will hold it. The next is PB 22.3, 570, 572, 574, 576 Sherbourne Street, and 37 Linden Street, alterations to and demolition of attributes on a designated property, and 29 Linden Street, removal of a building under sections 33 and 34 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. There are public speakers on this item, so I will hold it. The next item is PB 22.4, 296 to 300 King Street East and 56 to 60 Berkeley Street, alteration, demolition, and erection of a building on properties designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. There are public speakers on this item, so I will hold it. Next up is PB 22.5, 125 Sylvan Avenue, alterations to a designated heritage property and demolition of heritage attributes. There is a presentation from Heritage Planning staff available if the board would like to hear the presentation, and we have one speaker on this item, so I will hold it. And then finally, we have PB 22.6, 33 and 37 Maitland Street, alterations and demolition to heritage attributes at a designated property under section 33 and 34, subject 1.1 of the Ontario Heritage Act. There is a presentation from Heritage Planning staff available at this time if the board would like to hear the presentation. The report also contains a contact attachment. Would anyone like to hold this item?
I would like to hold it, Madam Wynn.
So Adam and Jeff have both moved to hold it, so that item is held. Now moving on back to PB 22.1, 111 and 115 Berkeley Street, alterations to heritage properties and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. There is a staff presentation for this. Would my fellow members care to hear the presentation? Yes. Thank you very much. So I will turn it over to staff. Good morning, Neil.
Good morning, everyone. So, hi, everyone. I am Neil McKay, a heritage planner, and I'm presenting on agenda item PB 22.1. Staff recommends that City Council approve the alterations proposed for the designated heritage properties at 111 Berkeley Street and 115 Berkeley Street in connection with the development application on the subject property, and that Council grant authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. Next slide, please. So the development site at 517 and 523 Richmond Street East and 97, 105, 111, and 115 Berkeley Street is situated on the southeast corner of the intersection of Richmond Street East and Berkeley Street in the King Parliament neighborhood. The subject site contains 111 Berkeley Street and 115 Berkeley Street, two properties designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Next slide. So constructed in 1881, the 2 1/2 story semi-detached housewarming building at 111 Berkeley Street is valued as a fine example of the bay and gable typology. The property contains well-executed defining features of Gothic Revival styling on the principal, the west elevation, including the steeply pitched roof gables. Completed in 1845, the Victorian 2 1/2 story housewarming building at 115 Berkeley Street, known as the Sheldon Ward House, represents a rare surviving pre-Confederation era residence constructed by local brick mason and City Councilman Sheldon Ward. Flanking Richmond Street East, this property is an eclectic blend of Georgian features and late 19th century Gothic Revival detailing. The properties shown here are valued for their historic association with Berkeley Street as the original eastern boundary of the 10-block town of York, established in 1793, and for their association with the history and development of the broader King Parliament area during its urban and industrial expansion from 1850 to 1914. The properties contribute to the historic character of the immediate and broader physical context of the street and the neighborhood. Next slide. On December 22nd, 2023, the city received a zoning bylaw amendment application regarding the proposed redevelopment of the subject property. As shown in these renderings, or as shown in the rendering and the drawing, the rezoning application proposes to retain portions of the existing heritage buildings at 111 Berkeley Street and 115 Berkeley Street in situ and incorporate them into the base building of a new mixed-use building. The scale, form, and massing of the heritage buildings will be altered through the proposed development. However, they will continue to be legible as three-dimensional structures on Richmond Street East and Berkeley Street. The new construction is not proposed above the retained buildings, but will be located behind them, providing visual separation and allowing the heritage buildings to be read independently in context. The proposed development involves the construction of a new masonry-clad four-story base building along Richmond Street East, which was reduced from 5 stories. The new base building will be clad in a compatible and subtle brick palette. Next slide. So at the rear of 115 Berkeley Street, the building on the corner, the proposed new construction will have approximately 5.68 meters of return at the rear. The north elevation of the proposed commercial space of the base building, shown in pink, is set back 3.1 meters from the property line, further reinforcing the prominence of the retained heritage building. And on the south side elevation of the mid-block 111 Berkeley Street, the proposed new development will be set back 9.13 meters from the house, from the front of the house. So due to building code requirements, the proposed new construction involves the introduction of a new exit door on the south side elevation of 111 Berkeley Street, fronting on the new proposed POP space, the publicly owned private space. The applicant has confirmed that the new door will utilize the existing non-original window opening, and the proposed introduction of a new door on the south elevation of 111 Berkeley Street will not impact any of the property's identified heritage attributes. So the application proposes as well that 111 Berkeley Street and 115 Berkeley Street will continue to be used for commercial or non-residential uses. The relationship between the windows and interior spaces is critical to maintaining the building's legibility and integrity. And so the applicant has confirmed that the existing interior floor arrangement and ceiling heights will be maintained. Next slide. So here's the rear of the heritage properties. The proposed development proposes the removal of the rear east elevations of 111 Berkeley Street and 115 Berkeley Street. However, these are not identified as heritage attributes. Additionally, the rear addition at 111 Berkeley Street has been unsympathetically altered and lacks integrity. A structural condition assessment report has determined that the proposed removals can be safely implemented, subject to carrying out the recommendations for repair and stabilization contained in the report. And you can see there shown highlighted is the rear, what will be removed as part of the project. So yeah, staff are of the opinion that the conservation strategy and mitigation measures proposed conserve the cultural heritage values, character, and attributes of the property, and are consistent with the property or the policy framework. Sorry, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Neil. We have 2 speakers. The first is Vanessa Hicks from MHBC.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Do you have a presentation for us or some comments?
Thank you. I do have some visuals, but I think Neil's presentation was very thorough. So I think I can do without those unless we really need them.
No problem. I just wanted to get a sense of whether I'm putting you on the timer or not. So you have 5 minutes and I will indicate when you have about 30 seconds left.
Thank you. I only need about 1 minute, and thank you, everyone. We were here just a few months ago talking about the proposed development, and that we indicated that we would be coming back to you for receiving approval for heritage permit applications. We've been working diligently with staff to make sure that we have a sound plan for the conservation of these buildings. And I would highlight that essentially these designated buildings and all of their heritage attributes and all of the building is going to be conserved, with the exception of the rear elevation where a portion of the building will be covered by the new lobby area. And like Neil said, returns of the building on the east elevation are going to be legible there. So we have a really good plan going forward to ensure that these buildings are conserved over the long term. And we've also done our due diligence to make sure that the alterations to the building and our structural conditions of the building are of the utmost importance. And we have recommendations from our structural engineer to make sure that these alterations are undertaken without any undue harm to these heritage buildings. So I'm here to speak on behalf of this heritage permit application and to seek approval of staff recommendations. And we will be working with staff to complete the conditions of the approval of this application, including the conservation plan and the heritage easement agreement. So we're hoping that you see that this is a very successful and happy heritage story, and the conservation of these buildings are very important to us, and we're going forward with an application for a development that really takes into consideration the conservation of these buildings. So I'm seeking approval of the staff recommendations and happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. I'm just going to pause here because we have Gabriel Didiano of Sweeney and Company Architects. I think maybe it makes sense that we let him speak, and then we can ask questions of both of our speakers, because it might go back and forth. Does that work for you, Vanessa and Gabriel?
Yes, both of us are knowledgeable on this application. I would, if you have questions related to heritage, I would be best to answer them, but anything related to the proposed development in terms of architecture and built features and things like that would be best suited for Gabriel, but happy to answer anything you have. Thank you.
Just knowing that we sort of go back and forth, I'm just trying to keep everything smooth for everybody. Gabriel, you have 5 minutes.
Well, thank you. Hello, my name is Gabriel Didiano. I'm from Sweeney & Co. Architects. We are the architects on the file. We were here, like Vanessa said, just before summer to introduce the project, and we're here again. The ownership is very supportive of retaining these buildings, conserving these buildings, and since day one, our plan was to conserve these buildings. We're supportive of the staff recommendations, and we hope you approve it.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for our speakers?
I have 3, and I'm going to ask them one at a time, unless anyone else would like to speak first.
So again, we'll do them one at a time, and I'll after you and Adam, just make sure that everybody else too. So help me.
May I ask the first one?
Yes, please.
During the previous meeting, I had raised concerns around the mismatched brick on the front of the corner building. You can see about 50 years of patchwork brick repair. Can you speak a bit more to how you plan to color match those bricks, and if there's any possibility to salvage bricks from the rear addition to be demolished for that color matching process?
I can attempt to answer that question. And if there are a number of, Adam, would you mind muting your mic for me?
Oh.
Thank you. Sorry, it's just a lot easier to answer that question without the feedback. Thank you, I appreciate that. So the question is there any attempt to properly match bricks at one of the elevations? And the short answer is yes, we are planning some brick repairs in the conservation plan. And if there is opportunities that are necessary related to condition, then we are absolutely prepared to do that. And the other question was related to whether or not we can salvage bricks from the rear addition. And the short answer is that the rear addition is from the 1970s, maybe even 1980s. So there's no ability to salvage bricks, given that it's not heritage fabric. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you for that clarification. I had thought the rear addition was older, but I certainly appreciate that clarification. Madam Chair, may I go on to the next 2 questions to tie together?
Pardon me?
Madam Chair, does anyone else wish to speak, or may I ask the next question?
Yes, you can. Does anybody else have a question before we proceed on to Adam second? No.
I,
All right,
I just
go
want to
for
give
it,
clerks advance warning. I would like to put a motion to have those mismatched bricks addressed in the conservation plan. But the next question is, could you please speak to whether you plan to use a heritage door design on any of those buildings or all of those buildings, a heritage window design, and whether there's any plans to rebuild any lost porch structures? Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. I think the question is twofold, related to windows and doors. And
Windows, doors, and porches.
Windows, doors, and porches. Thank you. And the short answer is we really haven't gotten to the point where we're answering questions related to windows and doors. I think that's something that we can definitely take back to the team and look at that further. I can assure you, however, that should any new windows and doors be proposed, those would require a heritage permit application and would be vetted through staff. And as it relates to any porches, I'm not aware of any evidence in the fire insurance plans or otherwise that would confirm that any porch ever existed. So given that it would be inauthentic and inappropriate for the building, we haven't proposed one.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. Other questions of our speaker? And a lot of this one. Okay, Adam.
Those were all of my questions. There will be some motions.
Thank you very much,
there will be
Adam.
some motions. Thank you.
Are there other questions of our speakers? Seeing none, thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll move over to questions of staff. Do we have any questions for staff?
I'd just like to flag to staff, I'm about to send some draft motions by email. Please keep an eye on your inbox. Thank you.
So we're moving on to discussion then, seeing no questions for staff. What are feelings? Opening the floor to discussion. Anybody have comments? Adam, do you have a comment?
Yes. So the motions I am going to be recommending is that as part of the conservation plan, we strongly encourage the bricks to be color matched on the primary elevation of that corner building, that a heritage sensitive door design be used, heritage window design be used, and that further research be done to determine if the porch structure ever existed on those heritage buildings.
Okay. Thank you very much, Adam. I think then as a result of what we are going to have to deliberate, unless there's other discussion that we'd like to proceed.
A thought.
Hi, Mitchell.
Yeah, hi.
And Adam, sorry, Mitchell, can you mute yourself? Not just if feedback is a little bit much. Thank you.
I think,
Mitchell,
yeah, no, I think color matching bricks, things like windows and doors are things that are going to be addressed in a conservation plan anyways. Do we really need to address those through a motion? Like, do we need to lock that down right now? Like, there will be a conservation plan. It'll be vetted by staff. Does that need to be dealt with through a motion?
Adam, what do you think? And if you want to continue to proceed with this, then we can similarly.
I can mute myself on this side. I think we're having an issue with multiple people muting me, unmuting me, muting me, unmuting me. To answer that question, I would like to lock it down now, please, because there's times that we don't lock it down and it doesn't get locked down in the future.
Okay. So I think then this will be, yeah, Paul.
Madam Chair, I was just going to suggest that we hold this item until Adam is on a better connection. It's just too dysfunctional to have it with all the sound issues. And I want Adam to stay safe on his bicycle and not be manipulating his phone. So why don't we just hold it?
Yeah, we're going to have to do that anyway for discussion and debate. So we're going to hold this item for later. Adam, I think you have declared a conflict on the next, so you can probably safely continue on your route, and we'll see you on camera hopefully soon. Moving on.
I'm about 30 seconds away from my office, so that's where we hold this. And that's I just want to have a conflict on anyways.
Thank
Give me
you.
time to work out.
Thank you. Moving along to PB 22.2, 214 to 230 Sherburne Street, alterations to heritage properties designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. And we see lovely Neil back, and I will turn the floor to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Through the chair, I'm presenting on agenda item PB 22.2. So staff recommends that City Council approve the alterations proposed for the designated heritage properties at 214 to 230 Sherburne Street under Section 42 of the Ontario Heritage Act in connection with the development application on the subject property, and that Council grant authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. Next slide. The subject properties are located on the west side of Sherburne Street, south of Dundas Street and north of Shooter Street, within the Garden District Heritage Conservation District in Toronto's downtown east neighborhood. Next slide. The development site contains a 2.5-story brick structure, known as the William Deneen House, and that is designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Constructed in 1872, the William Deneen House is a well-crafted example of a house form building typical of the style and type found in the city's upscale residential neighborhoods in the late 19th century. The property is directly associated with William Deneen, the co-founder of the W&D Deneen Company, and Toronto architects Langley and Langley are associated with the construction of the William Deneen House, and as well as designing alterations to the original building, and the building is currently vacant. In addition to its status as an individually designated property, 230 Sherburne Street is identified as a contributing building in the HCD plan. The development site also contains 214, 218, 220, 222, and 224 and 226 Sherburne Street, which are vacant properties designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. The vacant lots are classified as non-contributing in the plan. Non-contributing properties do not contribute to the area's heritage character. Next slide. So the subject site is located within the Dundas Street East character subarea, which runs through the heart of the district. The subject site is highlighted in blue here. Character sub-areas recognize that different forms of development may be appropriate throughout the district, and character sub-area specific policies and guidelines are intended to manage and inform alterations and new development in a way that respects and conserves the district's cultural heritage value. According to the district plan, it's expected that this Dundas Street East area will continue to evolve and grow while conserving the cultural heritage value and heritage attributes of the character sub area. So section 6 and 7 of the district plan contains policies and guidelines for contributing properties that have guided the review of this subject proposal. Next slide. The development application proposes a new mixed-use building with a 4-story podium infilling the existing gap in the Sherburne Street street wall. As shown in the drawings, the proposed development integrates the retained heritage building at 230 Sherburne Street into the new podium, shown at the north of the site plan and on the right side of the elevation drawing. The conservation strategy for the site consists of the in-situ retention of the 2 1/2 east portion of the building, which dates to 1872, and the east portion of the 1 1/2 story rear wing, which dates to 1880 to 1884, and it will be integrated into the base building. The retained portion of 230 Sherburne Street will be fully restored. The details of those restorations will be set out in a conservation plan to be completed to the satisfaction of the senior manager, heritage planning. So To maintain the low-scale historic character of the Garden District HCD, the proposed new podium located at 214 to 226 Sherbourne Street has been revised from 6 stories to 4 stories with an additional 2 stories step back from the east and south elevations. The floor plates at levels 5 and 6 have been refined to include a larger step back from the north elevation. Next slide. So new construction will be set back from the street while incorporating a proposed POP space, a publicly owned private space, maintaining the prominence of the Heritage Building and allowing for the south elevation of the retained building to be visible. The portion of the new development that directly abuts the Heritage Building is set back from the roof ridge. The base of the podium at the ground floor level includes a rhythm of narrow bays expressed vertically with arch colonnade. The central area of the podium includes a wider bay with horizontal expression further set back from Sherbourne Street. The new base building will be clad in a compatible brick material. However, the proposed brick of the new building will be distinguishable from the brick of the Heritage Building with different size, jointing, texture, finish, with a combination of those approaches. Additionally, the new construction to the rear of the retained building will be clad with a glazed material as shown in the drawings here, providing visual separation, allowing the retained fabric of the William Deneen House to be read independently. The base building complements the district's cultural heritage value and heritage attributes while reflecting its own time. Next slide, please. So as mentioned before, earlier in the presentation, a portion of the rear of 230 Sherbourne Street consisting of later additions that were built at different times after the construction of the original building, constructed in 1895 and 1910 to 1960, are proposed to be removed. An engineering letter determined that the removal of these west additions will not impact the stability of the remaining building structure and can be done so safely. The proposed removal will alter the scale, form, and massing of the existing house form buildings, or existing house form building. The T-shaped plan, where the main body of the house is extended to the west by a brick wing, and its materials and trim. The heritage attributes found in the primary, the east portion of the building, including the gable roof, organization, detailing, and trim on the principal east facade, the main entrance and entryway, and the fenestration are not proposed to be altered. Representative examples of elements in the west wing, the rear wing, will be maintained, including the mansard roof, gabled dormers, and segmental arched window openings. The retained building will maintain its presence on Sherbourne Street and retain its three-dimensional legibility in context. The T-shaped plan will also remain legible. Cleaning, repairing, and replacing masonry and stone will occur where necessary, and salvage elements from the rear portion of the building are proposed to be used for repairs on the retained building. The conservation strategy also includes the installation of a new historically appropriate wood windows throughout based on historic documentation and archival evidence. They will be based on the earliest known photograph in terms of design, material, profile. And the earliest known historic documentation showing the configuration of the front stair, which you can see is also proposed to be removed, dates to 1974 to 1984. And the front landing and stair is proposed to be reconstructed with materials and detailing in keeping with the historic character of the building. The details on the entrance, including the stair and the entrance door, will be set out in a forthcoming conservation plan. So while not a heritage attribute, the two bricks with the, there's a carving and it says W. Deneen on them. It's located on the north elevation in the portion of the building proposed to be demolished. And that will be salvaged and introduced into another publicly visible location to be addressed in more detail in the interpretation plan for the building and the property. So staff are of the opinion that this conservation strategy and mitigation measures proposed conserve the cultural heritage values, character, and attributes of the property and are consistent with the policy framework. And yeah, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Neil. We have one speaker on this item. We have Clara Shipman from ERA.
Yep, I'm here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Marvelous. You have 5 minutes.
Great. Am I able to share my screen with the presentation that I sent to the board?
I will let clerks help you out.
Hi, Clara. This is the host speaking. You should have presenter rights.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And are you able to see that?
We are.
Great. So thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Clara Shipman, and I'm a project manager at ERA Architects. We are the heritage consultants on this project, and we've been working on it for a number of years now. I want to thank Neil for his very detailed presentation. My intention is to make a short presentation and add a few details. I think Neil did such a great job covering that there may be a few repeated details, but hopefully a bit of new information as well. And then I'm here with my colleague, Dan Alon, to answer any questions that you might have about the project. These photos show the building's existing condition. So you can see the east street facing elevation on the left and the south elevation on the right. As Neil mentioned, the building is a 2.5-story building that's clad in painted brick with terracotta. And then there are chimneys at each corner, a mansard and gable roof, and then decorative wood dormers. The building is currently unoccupied and has been for a number of years. It's in poor condition with some areas in defective condition, including portions of the roof. The building has evolved over time and as shown in this diagram. We were able to identify different stages of construction. As you can see, the street-facing portion of the building was originally constructed as a wood frame building in 1872, and it was later overclad with brick. There were successive later additions to the rear of the building in the 1880s, 1890s, and 1900s. And while we know the dates of additions through kind of archival research, there are some things we don't know, like the date of the construction of the stairs on the east elevation. Our understanding is that those stairs are not original to the building, and we'll chat about that a little bit more. As Neil mentioned, starting in the 1870s and for about 40 years, the building was occupied by William Deneen, who was a businessman and community leader, and he hired architects to build an addition and do some alterations on the building. We don't have early drawings or photographs of the building. These are 2 of the earliest photos that we have and that will inform the conservation strategy. The photo on the left shows the earlier phase of the area's development. So you can see additional structures to the south of the building that have long since been demolished. The photo on the right is from 1984 and shows the building and the entrance stair that I had mentioned. That stair has fallen into disrepair and is currently boarded off. The proposed development is for a residential tower on a 4-story podium, which abuts the retained heritage building. The main portion of that heritage building is being retained. The new construction is set back from the street and includes large step backs above the heritage building to maintain the prominence of the heritage building. As Neil mentioned, there is a POPS or kind of courtyard space to the south of the heritage building, which you can see on the left of this image, and that provides an extensive view of the south elevation of the heritage building and ensures that its visibility is maintained. In terms of the conservation strategy, as I mentioned, the main portion of the building will be retained in situ. The roof structure will be reinforced and the roofing will be replaced. There will be a slate roof added to the pitched roof areas. There will be new historically appropriate wood windows throughout. There will be a new stair and landing in keeping with the historic character of the building. And then there will be conservation work to bring the building into a state of good repair, including the removal of the paint and various other work. So to kind of finish, we're very excited about this project and the revitalization of the building and the future use on the site. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, as I mentioned, Dan and I are here and happy to answer.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for our speaker? Seeing none. Oh, yes, Alex.
Yes, I just noticed that the front entrance in the sketch you just showed us had what looked like a railing with posts along it, whereas the one we saw earlier was a continuous brick wall. Would you be adopting the latter one you showed us with the distinct posts?
I think the stairs still under development. I think we will be developing that design in the conservation plan. The intention is to meet Ontario Building Code requirements. We will need to meet a certain height. I think the current stair may not be quite to those standards. I think some of the thinking is that there would be a brick kind of lower wall and then kind of an upper glazed portion. But again, those details are sort of currently being developed as part of the conservation work.
And is there also going to be a ramp portion for accessibility incorporated, or?
The accessibility will be provided from sort of along the south elevation. There will be a vestibule with an elevator in that portion to provide access.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions for our speaker? Jeff.
Not a question, but just a note. There is a motion coming forward which speaks to the porch.
We hold this for our discussion, so no relevance to our speaker right now, right?
Yeah, fair enough, yeah.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Are there questions for our speaker? Seeing none, we are moving on to questions of staff. Do we have questions for our staff? Seeing none, we're moving into discussion amongst ourselves. Any comments, any points to raise? Seeing no discussion, I have an item before us with recommendations. We need to take a recorded vote. Does anybody care to move the recommendations in the report? Hi, Jeff.
I wanted to raise some, the staff have prepared some motions.
And I think if you have amendments or a motion, then you need to email them to the clerks and staff, and then you would.
They were emailed.
You emailed them?
Yes.
Okay, so we have, then we are moving into discussion, and we have, do you want to speak to what you're moving, Jeff?
Yeah, well, maybe staff can put them up on the screen.
And I'll read them out. Okay.
Sorry, Julia, this is the clerk here. Jeff, we have not received an email from you regarding a motion on item 2.
Oh.
It has to come from you, Jeff, if you're the mover.
Okay, well, do you want to hold the item then? And
I can hold the item and we can move on to number 3. Moving on to number 3. 570, 572, 574, 576 Sherbourne Street and 37 Linden Street, alterations to and demolition of attributes on designated properties, and 29 Linden Street, removal of a building under sections 33 and 34 of the OHA, and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. We have a staff presentation. I'm going to assume we all would like to hear it, so I will turn it over to staff.
Madam Chair, just a point of order question here. Am I allowed on camera while the other items on hold?
Yes, because we're discussing, we are discussing point 3. So
Okay,
unless you have,
thank you. I wasn't sure the protocol when one had been hold because we hadn't encountered that before with the conflict. So thank you. We'll be on camera momentarily.
thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of the board. My name is Emily Game, and I'm a Senior Heritage Planner on the East Development Review Team. The item before you today is PP 22.3, which is a report recommending the approval of the alterations to and demolition of the properties at 570, 572, 574, and 576 Sherburne Street, as well as 37 Linden Street, as well as the removal of a building at 29 Linden Street. These approvals are being sought under Part 4, Sections 33 and 34 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Staff are also seeking authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. Next slide, please. So the subject site is located within the North St. James Town neighborhood on the west side of Sherburne Street, south of Linden Street. The site contains 7 heritage buildings on individual property parcels, and as I previously mentioned, they include 570, 572, 574, and 576 Sherburne Street, 29, and 37 Linden Street. These 7 properties are designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and I would like to note that the heritage attributes are limited to the exterior of the buildings. Next slide, please. So here we have an unobstructed view of the properties that front onto Sherburne Street, and they include 570 to 576 Sherburne Street. They contain 3-story late Victorian buildings with Richardson, Romanesque, and Queen Anne Revival influences, and these buildings were constructed between 1888 and 1889. Next slide, please. Here we have the elevation of 576 and 37 Sherburne Street. Like the properties fronting onto Sherburne, they were constructed circa 1888 and 1889 in a similar style. Next slide, please. I should note that the properties on Sherburne and Linden Street, they appear to be detached homes, but they're actually constructed as a row where a recessed tail near the rear wall connects each of the structures together. So on this slide, we have 29 Linden Street, and this property consists of a 2.5-story Second Empire brick house. Typical of the style, the house form building features polychromatic brick and a 3rd-story slated mansard roof. More detailed photographs of these properties and the surrounding neighborhood are included in the staff recommendation report, as well as the Heritage Impact Assessment completed by GBCA Architects. Together, the properties at 570 to 576 Sherburne Street, as well as 29 and 37 Linden Street, are important in defining, supporting, and maintaining the 19th century residential character of the area, and they include a mix of then fashionable Victorian era architectural styles, and these houses continue to define the streetscape today. Next slide, please. So here we have the proposed north, south, east, and west building elevations. The proposal alters the properties by introducing a 69-story tower with approximately 785 new residential units. Through the review process, staff were able to achieve the in-situ retention of 570, 572, and 574 and 576 Sherburne Street, as well as the relocation of 29 Linden Street. Originally, it was proposed that 29 Linden Street be panelized on site. The proposed tower is now set back behind the gable ridge line of the heritage structures with a proposed 7-story podium. The podium will have a 7.5 meter setback from the property line at Sherburne and a staggered setback between 5 and 6 meters along Linden Street. The proposed tower height has been changed from 63 to 69 stories, allowing for a slightly reduced floor plate. Changes have been made to the materials, fenestration, and the relationship between the new tower and the existing structures, making the proposed development more compatible with the form, massing, and scale of the heritage buildings. And while balconies are proposed for the on the tower, they are located at the 7th story, so well above the roof ridges of the heritage buildings. Next slide, please. So here we have rendering of the proposed development, including the podium and setback, as well as the proposed location of the house form building at 29 Linden Street. On the east elevation, the lower 2 stories consist of a brick building base and are proposed to feature brick cladding, and then above there's proposed to be glazing with spandrels, as well as a transition story with tinted vision glass, and that's proposed beneath the tower volume. So overall, the scheme creates a backdrop of 4 levels of light glazing, making the heritage elevations visible. And as noted before, while the balconies are proposed for all elevations, they are introduced at the 7th floor level, well above the roof line of the 3-story heritage facades. Next slide, please. So the development application proposes to incorporate the heritage buildings within the subject site fronting onto Sherbourne and Linden Streets. The retained heritage facades, as well as portions of the return wall at the north and south, and major portions of their gable roof will be fully restored as confirmed by the final heritage impact assessment prepared by GBCA Architects. The facade of 29 Linden Street will be located to 33 Linden Street, and the relocated structure will retain legibility as a single detached residential structure, including existing attributes such as the profiled cornice, mansard roof, and projecting front dormers on the principal facade. A more detailed conditioned assessment will be prepared for the retained facades and the return walls of the existing buildings. And this condition assessment will inform the conservation treatments required to conserve the heritage properties. New windows and doors, as well as wood features, are proposed for the properties on Sherbourne and Linden Street. And the visible roof area will be clad in new high quality shingles, including slate for the property at 29 Linden Street. The window, door, and roof design and materials will be based on archival information. And as I noted, the details of this restoration will be set out in the forthcoming conservation plan. In addition, staff are seeking a heritage easement agreement for the properties to ensure their long-term conservation. So in closing, staff support the proposal as the heritage attributes and values of the properties will be conserved in a manner consistent with the relevant municipal and provincial heritage policies. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily. We have 3 speakers registered on this item. The first I have on my list is Nicholas Barrett.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'm going to yield the rest of my 5 minutes. I simply want to say thank you to the board and Heritage staff for guiding the process, and Emily for your detailed presentation. I'll remain here if there's any specific questions related to Heritage.
Fantastic. Do we have any questions for Nicholas before we proceed to our other 2 speakers?
Nicholas, are you representing the owners here?
Sorry, Adam. Sorry, I thought you were going to be on camera.
Oh, I'm waiting for the clerk to send me the link, please.
The link is available. You were emailed the other day, yesterday, and the WebEx within that email.
But to answer your question, Adam, the owner will be here today speaking.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. I'm looking for that link. Oh, here it is here. Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. We'll wait to see you. Are there other questions for different? Seeing none, thank you very much. Moving on to Sean McGaffrey.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. You've got 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'll be brief. Really just here as the planner on the file retained by the owner. So my name is Sean McGaffey. I'm a Senior Associate, WND Associates, and really just here to thank Emily and the rest of staff for their hard work on this file and for coming to a great resolution, I think, for this proposal. Happy to address any questions in conjunction with Nicholas. I'm not a heritage planner, but I can speak to some of the planning questions if you have any. But again, just happy to be here and support the staff recommendations on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sean. Do we have any questions for Sean? Seeing none, we'll move on to our third speaker, Matt McCharles.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Matt, and I work for Altera. We are the applicant. I want to echo what Nicholas and Sean said. All stakeholders worked extremely hard to come up with a design that staff are supportive of, and we're really pleased with the design of the project and the integration of the heritage houses. So once again, I'm here with Nicholas and Sean, and I can answer any questions if needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Matt? Adam?
Actually, this will wait till the comment section between us, but it is something that does involve the applicant.
That's fine. We'll wait till our discussion. Are there any other questions for our speakers? Seeing none, thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us today and your time. Moving on now to questions of staff. Are there questions of staff on this file? Jeff.
I don't know if it's appropriate, but I have a question that attempts to put into context the three applications that we've been dealing with this morning that all pertain to the downtown east. I guess there's one more, but they reveal a massive change to the downtown east area and to the potentially to the Heritage Conservation District plan. I guess of a positive nature, because what you're doing here is not just retaining the outside walls. You're actually the whole building in most cases, I think, and you're providing linkage and space between the legacy structure and the new buildings. I'm just wondering whether the staff would have any comment on the broader context of what's happening in this neighborhood and whether it provides a model or advice to city building more generally.
Thank you. Well, staff, who would like to take on the question?
I just have a question about, I recognize this is a general question. So I'm wondering if there's something specific we can answer about this particular application.
Jeff?
Well, no, that's my point, is that when do we get to generalize about the implications of individual applications that are coming to the board? There's policy implications here, and where are they being discussed?
Well, our review of these applications all happened within the context of reviewing against the district plans. And our opinion is that they comply with the district plans, and that's what we ask people to do. And so as many people who can satisfy the district plan will have developments in this area, and the question of whether or not it's the right built form or too much development, that's a completely different planning question, in my opinion. We put together the plan to guide developments, and we're satisfied that these applications comply.
Thank you. Other questions of staff? Adam. You're muted, Adam.
Hi, this is a question that could be triaged to staff or could be triaged to the applicant or both.
It needs to be Staff, we've already been to our questions for
Okay, staff, are you encouraging a specific use for the heritage buildings are presently or more recently used residentially? Are they being encouraged to be remained as residential townhomes? Will they be community space? What is the current plan for these? And what is staff encouraging?
So the relocated property will be used as an individual townhouse, while
Yep.
the properties fronting onto Linden Street, as well as the one on the corner building at Sherbourne and Linden, will be used as amenity space. So all of the properties will continue to be used for residential purposes.
Except for the corner one?
Well, they're going to be residential in that they're going to be amenity spaces associated with the tower development.
So all the ones at Sherbourne Street will be amenity?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there other questions of staff? Seeing none, thank you very much, and we'll move into discussion amongst ourselves. Does anybody have a point that they would like to raise? Adam? Oh, yes.
I'm sorry, Julia. I don't mean to go out of point, but I have been advised, because I'm getting confused about all the items being open and not open. This particular application is not in Heritage Conservation District. Some of the others on this agenda are. So my generalized comment about HCDs does not apply. However, in the spirit of the same reply, it meets it meets the policies within the city's official plan, heritage policies, and so we are recommending approval based on those policies and the standards and guidelines. But the same comment applies in terms of the intensity of this development. That is something that is being looked at by City Council and by the Planning Division on the whole, and our role in Heritage is to make sure that the applications comply with our part of the picture. And we work very hard to do that, so thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Jeff, question?
Well, just to further the conversation with Mary, I do feel that in fact there's progress here, that rather than just absorbing a heritage building into a new development, there is a greater level of integrity, distinctiveness, presence on the street represented by what you have brought forward today. And I don't know, I mean, you're saying that you've just reviewed these as a regular matter of business. You followed the HCD, you followed the usual OHA requirements, policies, and that may be the case. But I'm questioning whether there's actually something that's worth thinking about in a longer perspective about what's happening here on Sherbourne and the downtown east area that is worth considering from a planning, heritage planning, but broader planning perspective.
So I'm now a little confused, Jeff. You're saying that your observation is that these applications you feel are better resolved than previous applications you've seen, and you're
I think there's a high
wondering
level of integrity, of heritage integrity. I'd be interested in other people's comments on that as well.
It's a good segue into discussion amongst ourselves. And if one of the comments is to see things within a larger pattern going forward, then what's lovely is we have staff here and listening as we sort of make our comments about, well, where is this constellation of development? And here we have an example of really solid heritage integrity being maintained. Maybe we do need to take a step back and see the forest for the trees in this case. And I think that's duly recorded, and I think a well-raised point, Jeff. Are there other sort of points of discussion that we would like to raise? Adam.
I have a few motions for this item, but before I delve into that, I really want to commend both the staff and the applicant. This is a wonderful example where we went from a partial heritage retention of just the corner building with the tower to almost a continuous street wall on Sherbourne Street of this wonderful Queen Anne Revival row house, as well as the Second Empire building on Linden. So it's an absolute improvement for this project. I commend you for all that wonderful work done over the recent years. For anyone from the applicant's team that's still listening, please, please, please send somebody out there to fix or secure the stained glass windows. People have been using them as target practice and throwing rocks through them. It also appears that people may be living on some of your porches, and part of the porch is unsafe at this point. So I've been trying to reach for several weeks someone at that team to flag this to them. I'm not sure if that's ever made it to you, but if you are listening, please send somebody out there to secure the properties. We really do not want to see these lost to fire or vandalism. In terms of my motion, there's a few items that I want to flag. One is on that relocated building on Linden Street. It would be wonderful if we could include a heritage door design in that. The contemporary door is mismatched with the wonderful restoration of the rest of that Second Empire building. I'd also like to encourage that closer examination be given to the heritage roofing materials. At present, we have slate roofs, we have metal roofs, and we have asphalt roofs on these buildings. The slate roofs and the metal roofs in particular, I would assume likely it was a slate roof on the whole complex, given the other what's existing on certain elements of it. I strongly encourage that a closer examination of the roofing materials and archival evidence be given to encourage a heritage sensitive and heritage texture of a roof design be implemented on this site. It really does change the appearance of these buildings, given the significance of the roof designs in Queen Anne Revival and Second Empire buildings.
So hearing that you would like to amend the recommendation.
I would like to amend to include some motions. Clerk, should we get those motions on the screen, please?
Yes, I can ask that one too. Thank you. Thank you, clerk. So we have a motion for us that the Toronto Preservation Board recommends that 1, City Council direct the Senior Manager, Heritage Planning, Urban Design, City Planning to consider the following when reviewing the conservation plan. A, the historic roofing materials, slate, metal, etc., be used throughout the project, and B, historic door design be used for the rehabilitated heritage buildings. So we're going to talk about this motion, and then we're going to vote as to whether we want to include it within the recommendations. If yes, then we will move to the report as recommended. Otherwise, it's just the recommended. We'll just move the recommendations. So right now we're talking about the addition of this motion from raised by Adam. So discussion amongst ourselves. We've heard Adam speak to it. Is there other discussion? Paul.
I wouldn't argue against Adam's views as to opportunities to improve the proposal. I just wonder about whether it is within our mandate to ask council to make that kind of direction as opposed to just giving that feedback directly to Heritage Planning and letting them work with that on the as they negotiate the final design. Some of these things might actually bog down the issue at council if council then is being asked to delve into this kind of thing. And I think maybe again, while I don't disagree with Adam's suggestions, I wonder if maybe it's best left between ourselves and Heritage Planning without putting this in a recommendation to council.
I think that's a well-raised point. I see Mary has popped up on the screen. Perhaps, do you want to shed some light?
Yes, and I understand the question because we've always been really clear that the Preservation Board doesn't direct the work of staff, that your advice is to City Council. And so in working through some of these motions yesterday, I consulted our legal section, and what they suggested was something that, in fact, I think will not bog down the process, because the conservation plans are delegated. The review of the conservation plan is actually delegated to staff. And so you'll see in all the recommendations always the refrain, right, to the satisfaction of the senior manager. And so what our legal section suggested was, in order to get the, if the board feels it's necessary for these comments to be on the record through a motion, and I would say it's not always necessary, but that is your business to do or not do as you wish. We are always happy to hear comments and would always integrate them even if they didn't come in a motion. But just saying, if you want the motions, the way it's structured is that we're using soft language like consider, explore, consult. And it's for the senior manager to do that, and in the context of the conservation plan development. And so what Tanya will do is will create recommendations that reflect the board's additions. So it'll look like, it'll just be adding those bits. And so council will take a look at that, and they will consider whether or not they want the senior manager to raise this question during the development of the conservation plan, or do they not, or do they want to just take the staff recommendations? I have absolutely no concerns with the structure of this as I have talked through it. It looks different than we've normally done it, but this is the way we'll be doing it going forward. So I hope that it's fine.
Thank you very much, Mary. Much appreciated. Paul, does that help you out as well? It certainly did me.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Is there other discussion of the motion to amend the amendments before us? Other discussion? Seeing none. Sorry, yes, Adam, do you have discussion point?
Just a comment in general. It would be interesting to see who owns that easement at the back that I suspect is an orphan laneway owned by someone long dead that's directly associated with this site. Just a point of comment for anyone listening there.
Other points of discussion? Seeing none, we're going to move into a vote. First of the day, well, or second, I guess. Anyway, so Adam has moved the amendment. Jeff, are you in favor or do you have a question? All those in favor?
In favor.
Okay. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. I see one opposed, so I'm going to say Julia, Paul, Alex, Katerina, Jeff, Adam, Kurush, and Matthew are in favor. And Mitchell, are you opposed?
Principle, yeah.
You're opposed? Okay, thank you. The motion carries, the amendment carries. So now we're talking about the item PB 22.3 as amended. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, would anybody care to move the motion as
Discussion point. I do want to acknowledge some of the, thank you for just flight. Some of the existing buildings do have the original doors intact, and I hope that's captured within this motion as well to be preserved.
Thank you very much. Other discussion? Okay, we're voting again. Does anybody care to move the item's recommendations as amended? Adam, all those in favor? Okay, so I'm just gonna, everybody's in favor, the motion carries. Fantastic. Are we able to move back to other items? Can we just to conclude them? Can we move back to 22.1? Yes, I guess Tanya, are you ready for that?
Yes, I'm just confirming with my committee secretary that the motion is ready for that one. And we're good to go with that one too. So we can move back to item number 1.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So we're moving back to 22.1. We've already had questions of our speakers and questions of staff. We're now in discussion amongst ourselves, and we have a motion before us, which Adam has moved. We have that up on the screen and I will read it out. Thank you. So the amendment is that the Toronto Preservation Board recommend that City Council direct Senior Manager, Heritage Planning, Urban Design, City Planning to consider the following when reviewing the conservation plan. A, request the applicant undertake additional research to confirm any original porch designs and restore the features if documentary evidence is available. B, mismatch bricks where appropriate. And C, employ heritage-sensitive door and window designs based on documentary evidence or period-specific designs. Thank you. Is there discussion of what's before us? What would amend the recommendations? Jeff?
Madam Chair, it seems to me that the wording there is a little tougher than the one we just looked at. It's not request, it's direct in this case. Is that intended?
That's a good question. Is that just a
No, that's not intended. I'll have, if you can hold this down, I have to speak with the clerk.
No problem.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. We'll hold this one again. We'll redo. We'll get through everything, guys. Are we good to move on to 22.2?
Hi, Madam Chair. We're good to move on to item 2 while we sort out that little issue on item 1.
Perfect. Adam, can you please mute yourself and take yourself off camera? Thank you very much. Once again, we've had our questions of speakers and of staff. So now we have, Jeff has put a motion to amend this item. Could that amendment be put on the screen? Please. So the amendment is that the Toronto Preservation Board recommend that City Council direct. I'm guessing that this is going to be the same place as there's a direct in here, as opposed to a recommend.
Yeah, this does not reflect what I sent. My wording was the Toronto Preservation Board request the senior manager.
So I think we're in the same boat as we were with option 1.
If I may, it's just, City Legal provided me with a new way of doing this yesterday. And so I think as it's moving through our corridors, things are getting changed back to the way we have done it in the past. And so we're just internally sorting this out. Sorry.
I get it. This is good.
We'll get there.
We're practicing, everybody.
Yeah.
Let's
yeah.
move on to
we're evolving. Yes.
Yes, Jeff.
Just by word of explanation, there are two aspects of it. One deals with the conservation plan.
It out, and we have
that's
bit, otherwise
one.
Really.
And the other one refers to the interpretation plan, which is C5 of the staff recommendation.
But let's let clerks and staff sort it out. We're going to move on to point 4 as they sort out items 1 and 2 for us again. And then we'll sort of see where we're at. So item PB 22.4, 296 to 300 King Street East, 56 to 60 Berkeley Street, alteration, demolition, and erection of a building on properties designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. We have a staff presentation, and I will turn it over.
Okay.
Morning,
good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'm Jennifer Guerin, and I'm a heritage planner with the City of Toronto. And this morning, I'll be presenting on agenda item PB 22.4, 296 to 300 King Street East, and 56 to 60 Berkeley Street for alteration, demolition, and erection of a building on properties designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act, as well as the authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. I should also mention that there will be a separate report from City Legal dealing with the related Planning Act application. Next slide, please. So the subject site is located on King Street East on the northwest corner of King and Berkeley Streets. Adelaide Street East is directly north of the site. Next slide, please. So the subject site is located within the St. Lawrence Neighbourhood Heritage Conservation District, which is designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. The HCD plan was approved by the OLT on November 16th, 2021, and is now in force. So the buildings at 298 to 300 King Street East, which are shown in these slides, are noted as contributing buildings within the district and are actually two of the oldest remaining structures of the original 10 blocks dating back to 1845. The buildings also contribute to the physical value of the district through their modified Georgian Revival architecture, characterizing the commercial warehouse typology. So this development proposal was reviewed in conjunction with the HCD plan, specifically section 5.16, regarding infill and new development. Next slide, please. So the proposal involves in situ retention and conservation of the two contributing buildings at 298 to 300 King Street East. It also involves the demolition of the non-contributing building at 296 King Street East and 58 to 60 Berkeley Street, which are highlighted in red on the slides, as well as a north addition at 300 King Street East to facilitate the construction of a 46-tower, 1.5-story infill component at 296 King Street East and a 3-story podium and street wall along Berkeley Street, which will be in line with the existing setback. Next slide, please. So the proposal includes a cantilevered tower set back 15.1 meters from the retained King Street East building's primary facades. And then additionally, there will be 3 step backs from King Street East, the first at the 6th floor tower, which is at 13.9 to 13.28 meters from the primary King Street facades. The second step back will be located at the 10th floor and is 10.14 to 10.23 meters. And the third is at the 13th floor and will be set back 7.04 to 7.13 meters from the primary King Street facades. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the proposal from each elevation, so we can see how the setback and step backs relate to the retained buildings, as well as the form and massing of infill components at 296 King Street and along Berkeley Street. Next slide, please. So the conservation strategy for the proposed development, which was prepared by ERA, involves retaining the contributing heritage buildings at 298 to 300 King Street East. The properties will be rehabilitated as part of the proposed development, and this involves masonry and stone cleaning, removal of the parging on the east and west elevations, as well as repair and replacement in kind where necessary. The non-original windows and doors on all elevations of the retained buildings will be replaced in accordance with the St. Lawrence Neighborhood HCD guidelines and will be physically and visually compatible with the heritage attributes and in compliance with the standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places in Canada. Also, the door on the east elevation will be lowered to grade. So in conclusion, Heritage Planning staff are supportive of the proposed alterations to contributing Part 5 designated buildings, new construction, and the demolition of non-contributing buildings and the rear addition on a contributing building under Section 42 of the Ontario Heritage Act. All of this in the context of the conservation and mitigation strategies proposed for the site. The contemporary and restrained material palette, simple form, and step backs work well to reinforce the distinction between new and old building volumes while maintaining the prominence and legibility of the retained heritage buildings. Staff are of the opinion that the proposal has been designed to conserve the cultural heritage values, attributes, and character of the subject heritage properties and the St. Lawrence Neighborhood HCD. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. We have one speaker on this item, Emily Collins. Hi, Emily. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning. I'll be very brief. I just wanted to introduce myself. Emily Collins. I'm the Senior Project Manager at ERA. We are the Heritage Consultants for the project. I really just wanted to come on and thank Ben and Jennifer for her presentation and our coordination on this project together. And I'm really just here for questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Emily? Hi, Adam, go for it.
Hi. Hi, Emily. I'm just wondering if any consideration was given to eliminate the cantilever over the Heritage Building to limit the visual impact on that Heritage Building, especially as you approach from the east on King Street where there's a curve. The cantilever is still quite overpowering from that angle. If not, why was this not considered? If it was considered, why didn't it get eliminated?
I do understand that there was significant conversation as part of the settlement discussions, mostly with urban planning and design. Perhaps Jennifer has more insight into that, but I believe that was kind of pushed off to not a heritage matter.
Fair enough. Any other questions for Emily? Seeing none, thank you very much for your time this morning. Are there questions of staff? Adam.
Question for staff, and I apologize again if this is triage back to ERA, but the removal of the parging is unclear in the plans to date. Can you speak to as whether anything has been submitted as to whether the applicant plans to reapply any materials to that east elevation?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, they are planning on removing the parging. The plan, and Emily, correct me if this is inaccurate, the plan is to re-expose the original brick facade through the removal of that parging and any restoration work that will be required as a result of that removal.
Thank you. Other questions of staff? Perfect. Thank you very much. Seeing none, thank you, Jennifer, for your time and your presentation this morning. And we're going to move into discussion amongst ourselves. Any points to raise? Adam.
This is quite an interesting building in the history of that section of King Street. There's a curve right next to it, which is atypical for the downtown streets of that era. And underneath that parging, we have two distinct lines of coining. I strongly encourage that those be highlighted as the something that interprets the evolution of this building over time. It's quite unique in the historical archival photos from the 1920s, where you can see the distinctive evolution of that storefront. I'd also would like to bring forward a motion around historic storefront design that, and my apologies to the clerk that I'd flagged the coining around the storefront design. If the archival documentation could be used to guide the restoration of the storefront, I think that would be something that would benefit this project. I'd like to have a conversation around the cantilever.
A conversation amongst ourselves?
Amongst ourselves. I would love to hear the rest of the board's perception on it, whether that cantilever is overpowering or not with the Heritage Building.
What say you, board? And Jeff?
Well, I think indeed I would agree, and more than that, it fails the point I made earlier this morning about the three earlier proposals, which have I think maintained the level of integrity of the Heritage Building by physical separation from the new development, and physical and contextual, the way the design was done. This one fails. It doesn't have the same standard, in my opinion. I don't know what other people feel, but it's kind of disappointing, and the concern is exacerbated by the tier, the wedding cake, reverse wedding cake design, allowing for way more ground floor space, not ground floor, FSI in the building, and totally overpowering the Heritage Building. I think it's very disappointing. Thank you.
Other comments? Discussion points?
I'm a bit curious about, in certain contexts, cantilevers are discussed as a heritage matter in terms of how they interact with the Heritage Building, whether they overpower it. I'm confused as to why this one was deferred as not a heritage matter, and whether there's an opportunity for us to have a motion to encourage it, that cantilever be reduced or alternate to be considered for it. It really does overpower that Heritage Building. That's such a prominent Heritage Building on a corner, and as you approach from the around the curve on King Street, it really overpowers it.
So I wouldn't have an answer to that. Like, I know that there's two applications as part of this process. There's the heritage and there's the planning one. And at some point, the recommendations for us, because it's under in part 5, they are satisfied and we're dealing with sort of the heritage pieces. So where it came down in that design process, we can only speak to what has now been within our purview, which is changes under the Heritage Act and the cantilever. We could talk about impact, we can have that discussion, but if it's not germane to a discussion of alterations, etc., under the Heritage Act, then it's outside of our scope. Jeff.
Well, I would agree that I think it is a planning issue rather than a heritage issue, because if you separated the buildings, the new building from the heritage building, you would in fact improve the project, improve the integrity of the heritage building, and you could still retain the wedding cake design. So it is probably the problem is with planning, not with heritage.
I think that's that.
I also wonder if there's a risk of ice fall from that cantilever onto the heritage building, potentially causing damage, but that's something we'll discover in the future, I guess.
We will. Is there any other points of discussion? Hi, Paul.
I just wanted to offer a dissenting view to that. The criterion we're concerned about is the legibility of the heritage building. That's the overwhelming concern. And I actually thought the cantilever was not particularly severe in that respect. The heritage structure is very well defined and retained. And again, from a planning point of view, do I like seeing buildings with this much cantilever? Absolutely not. But I can't fault the heritage intent here. And I actually liked the way on the east side, how even though it's not part of the heritage structure, the first 3 stories, how the line there kind of contributes to what we're trying to retrain in the district, which is the low profile, low story line of the street. So I actually thought this was pretty good. And the last point I'd make is just that the east wall of the heritage property is just not a very pretty wall by any standard. There's not much you could do to really celebrate that wall. And the best we can do is just conserve it as it is. The corner will never be a particularly pretty corner, given that the building was not really built to be designed as a corner building. So my point of view, I think this one is acceptable.
Thank you very much, Paul. Other points of discussion? Adam.
Paul, I dissent with the east wall comment. The archival photos from the 1920s, it's a very interesting building feature there with 2 lines of coining representing the evolution of the building over time. And those 2 lines could be highlighted as a design feature. Could we perhaps pull up that 1920s photo for reference? I think it's in the report. This is directly related to your motion. If not, I can see if I can pull up very, very quickly.
In which report are you referring to, Adam?
I believe it's in the applicant's HIA.
And I'm not sure that that's available to us. We could have found it through the development. I don't know if it is available.
If you bear with me 30 seconds, I'll have it on the screen.
I can save you the time, Adam, in the sense that I take your point. There may be very interesting heritage features within that wall, but it was not really designed as a corner wall. That's all I was trying to say.
Thank you, Paul. I think let's leave the picture aside as we try to continue to keep things in focus. You have a motion, Adam, that you sent to staff that you'd like to raise?
I do. There's one that should still be under development as well. So if we could hold this item while the staff get back here on the storefront design, and that I'm going to be very frank, the historical image also directly relates to a motion I'm bringing forward, and it would help the board with the context, I think, to see that historical imagery of what I'm advocating be highlighted.
I will. Thank you. Thank you. But if we're going to table this, let's have the discussion all at once, or at least we're trying to do that. So we're tabling this one. Are we able to go back to point 1?
Yes, Julia, we can go back to item 1.
Does anybody else feel like they're in a Bill Murray movie today? Anyway, point 1. We've already heard all of our public speakers and our questions of staff. We have a motion before us. How about we put it up on the screen, please, and thank you. That the Toronto Preservation Board recommends that the senior manager, heritage planning, urban design, city planning, to consider the following when reviewing the conservation plan. A, request the applicant undertake additional research to confirm any original porch designs and restore the features if documentary evidence is available. B, match mismatched bricks where appropriate. And C, employ heritage sensitive door and window designs based on documentary evidence or period specific designs. So Adam has moved this motion. Are there discussion of these of the proposed amendment? Mitchell.
Just restating that I think that this is material and points of clarification that staff asks for anyways when these projects go through. So I don't think this is necessary.
Thank you, Mitchell. Other points of discussion? Adam.
I agree, Mitchell, but there are times when unfortunately things fall through the cracks, and due to the sheer workload, I prefer to specify this at this point, just to be erring on the side of caution and supportive of all the wonderful work that staff do.
Other points of discussion? Adam, do you know that there's photos that exist of a porch? Because we've heard from our public speakers saying that, you know, they had a lot of digging. So are you asking them to do more digging? Like, I just don't know, sending them on a
Given the prominence of that building in that location of the city, there are likely photographs perhaps in some of the 19th century accounts of life in Toronto. And there may be evidence with anchoring in the walls of what may have been there at one point.
Okay. Other points of discussion? Seeing none, Adam has moved the amendment. All those in favor of the amendments, please raise your hand. And I'm going to just read names. Paul, Jeff, Adam, Alex, Matthew, Kurash, and Katerina are in favor. Mitchell and I are opposed, and the motion carries. We now have before us a staff report as amended. Do we have any other discussion points for point 1? Seeing none, would anybody like to move the staff recommendations as amended? Adam, all those in favor, please raise your hand. All in favor, and the motion carries. Thank you very much. I think that's the third time we went back to point 1, so maybe the third time that is the charm is really what we're dealing with. So third time the charm for point 2. Let's see, are staff ready for this one?
We are ready for this one too now, Julia.
Fantastic, thank you so much. So back to 22.2, 214 to 230 Sherbourne. We have now an amendment, if they could put it on the screen, please. That the Toronto Preservation Board recommend that the senior manager, heritage planning, urban design, city planning, consider the following when reviewing the conservation plan. A, the existing porch structure be restored based on documentary evidence, or where such evidence does not exist, be replaced by historically appropriate design organized around a central staircase. B, the paint be removed from exterior masonry and terracotta elements of the building. C, the existing interior elements such as the marble and ornate fireplaces, grand central staircase, woodworking, interior door and window arrays, and plaster details be retained where possible. D, alternate designs be explored for the at-grade arches of the contemporary addition to the south of the building to minimize visual impacts. And E, historic door design be used for the rehabilitation of the heritage properties. So Jeff has moved these amendments. Do we have discussion on them?
There is more. There's amendments with respect to the interpretation plan.
Yes, Julia, I was just gonna hop on here and let you know we're gonna display the second motion now.
Oh, perfect.
We
Thank
split
you.
it into two different motions because
Okay,
of the
well
way
then
it
we
was.
should consider both before we vote.
Yes, we'll
Yeah, so we're going to display the second motion now.
Thank you. And number 2, that the Toronto Preservation Board recommend that the Senior Manager, Heritage Planning, Urban Design, City Planning to consider the following when reviewing the interpretation plan. A, the following themes be explored: the history of 213-230 Sherbourne Street, including notable early occupants, the architectural redesign, its use as a rooming house, the importance and legacy of the Dineen family in Toronto, and the history of affordable housing activism in this site. Is there discussion? So we have 2 amendments with multiple parts. Well, the first one with multiple parts. Is there discussion? Seeing none. Oh, yes, Paul, please.
I'm sorry, but I will be a stick in the mud a bit on this one. I guess I'd, with respect to the first motion, the item that refers to the interior attributes, I would just like to know whether those attributes are actually in the original designation for the property, or is this sliding in something beyond the original designation? And I guess now I've lost my train of thought on my second point, but I guess again the issue of raising issues of the past history of the building, again, I would have thought that was all part of the original designation, the research and the due diligence that went into the designation. I don't know if it's appropriate to slide that in when this is a request to alter the designated attributes rather than all of that would be very material if this were a recommendation to designate, but maybe the ship has sailed on all of that. Just a comment.
Thank you, Paul. Jeff.
Can I just correct an error in the motion 1? The last item, I think it deals with doorways. That's not correct. That was from a previous motion, I think. It just had the 4 points, not 5.
Mitchell, I saw your hand up. I'm just going to let clerks sort of speak to this one.
I was just going to say I actually thought the interpretation plan motion was more appropriate because I think it can actually be used to explain like a fuller history of a site. So I thought that where I don't seem to be agreeing with the other motions. The interpretation plan I think is actually kind of appropriate to kind of talk about broader themes that can't be covered in the original designation for whatever reason, if it was designated many years ago and we weren't thinking about things a certain way. But yeah, that's it.
No, I think that's appropriate. And I think what we'll do is we will vote on each of the amendments separately, given that there are 2, because I think that's probably the more appropriate way forward, and it will reflect our consensus in a more appropriate way. So just to Jeff's points, to staff and clerks, the removal of the E, I think the 5th one, can we bring up that first one?
Julia, yes, we removed the E item on that one. We'll display it now.
Perfect. I'm not going to reread. I'm sure everybody is tired of hearing me do that, but you see that it does amend it. So because we're going to vote on them each, we've had some discussion. Is there any discussion on this particular amendment? Seeing none, Jeff has moved this motion. All those in favor of this first amendment, please raise your hand. Alex, Jeff, Katerina, Courage. All those opposed, Paul, Julia, and Mitchell. Tanya, what does that mean? Does it carry? I think so.
If it's a tied vote, then it loses.
It was 4-3.
Oh, then it carries, sorry.
Then it carries. Okay, so that carries. Moving on to the Second Amendment. Thank you. The one with respect to the interpretation plan. Jeff moved the item. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, Julia, Mitchell, Alex, Jeff, Kurash, and Katerina, all opposed. Paul, motion carries. Keeping clerks on their toes today, my goodness. And now we have before us a motion to PB 22.2 as amended. Any last discussion about it before we move into a vote? Seeing none, would anybody care to move the recommendations as recommended, as amended? Jeff, all of those in favor, please raise your hands. All in favor, and the motion carries.
Julia, you have to do a recorded vote on this one.
Recorded vote. Oh, I knew there was something. I was getting so good. Okay, recorded vote. Raise your hands, please, and I'll call out your name. Julia, Paul, Alex, Jeff, Kurash, Katerina. All opposed? Mitchell? You're opposed? No, you're in favor, and Mitchell is in favor too. So that's Julia, Mitchell, Jeff, Alex, Paul, Katerina, Kurash, all in favor. Motion carries. Good, Tanya?
Perfect, thank you.
All right. Now moving on to, can we dare do PB.4? Are we ready for it?
Give us one moment, I'm just checking.
Okay.
Yes, we are ready to go back to number 4.
Back to number 4. Adam can rejoin us now. Back on to number 4. We've had our speakers, we've had our questions of staff. We now have a motion before us to amend. Can we put that up on the screen, please?
Julia, give us one moment.
Of course.
And Madam Chair, I have a request if we could hear item 6 after this one, please, in lieu of item 5.
I appreciate that, Adam. I'd like to move in order, and we have a confidential, which might mean that we have to move into a closed section.
Okay.
I'm trying to go easy on clerks. You know, we've
Okay.
already.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Hi, Julia. I probably have to leave after this motion, so just letting you know that beforehand.
Okay.
Okay, Julia, we're ready to display this motion for item 4.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's have it on the board, please. That the Toronto Preservation Board recommend that the Senior Manager, Heritage Planning, Urban Design, City Planning consider the following when reviewing the conservation plan. A, the underlying brick on the east elevation be re-exposed as part of the rehabilitation, and the 2 distinct lines of coining be retained and highlighted to depict the evolution of this building. And B, the original storefront design be reinstated based on documentary evidence where available. Are there discussion points on this motion? Adam.
Yeah, I'm just pulling something up on screen share to show the photo reference. And do we know if the chimneys are being reconstructed?
That's a question that we can ask. We're having just sort of a discussion. So you pulled up a picture to show us.
So you can see the evolution. There's multiple lines of coining. My apologies. That motion should be 3 coining lines, not 2.
Okay, thank you. We can probably quickly amend that.
And the banding, the horizontal banding should be included as well. Thank you. For horizontal coursing.
Tanya, can we make those really quick adjustments so that we can move through this vote?
Yeah, we're just
Perfect. So while that's
that now.
we're doing that adjustment, we can still discuss because we've sort of heard what those changes are going to be. Is there any discussion upon this, upon the amendment proposed? Seeing none.
Oh, my apologies. One more brief addendum. In the conservation plan, can we also please encourage mismatched bricks be matched where possible on that east elevation?
That's a whole new bit. Like, Adam, we asked to do this in advance. You provided. Are you content with it as is, or is this really important and you need to go back through it again?
It drastically alters the restoration and the appearance of this building.
All right, so then if this is what you want, the motion needs to reflect what you wish it to be.
Yes.
Table this one again.
Hi, Julia. Yeah, I'm just going to pop in here and just say, so we made that one change, but the second change, Adam, that you mentioned during the meeting, we didn't quite get. So if you could send us an email with that additional change, we'll add that to the motion on item 4.
Thank you so much. My apologies. It's not that I'm trying to create headaches for anyone.
Moving on to PB point 22.5, 125 Sylvan Avenue, alterations to a designated heritage property and demolition of heritage attributes. We have a staff report before us. Hi, Colin, welcome. You are the next contestant at the Preservation Board meeting. I will turn it over to you.
Hi, my name is Colin Yu. I'm a heritage planner with the city, and I'll be presenting on agenda item PB 22.5, alterations to a designated heritage property and demolition of heritage attributes. Next slide, please. The McNeil House is at 125 Sylvan Avenue, is located southeast of Kingston Road and Markham Road, on the south side of Sylvan Avenue between Catalina Drive and Bethune Boulevard. The subject property sits atop the Scarborough Bluffs along the shore of Lake Ontario amid a row of private waterfront homes in the neighborhood of Scarborough Village. Next slide, please. The subject property at 125 Sylvan Avenue is designated under Section 29, Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, built by architect James Murray in 1963 for Burdett Harrison McNeil and his wife Helen McNeil. The modernist home is unique for its custom design. Many of the homes in the area fit this typology of post-war suburban bungalows and split levels, with a mix of much more recent homes present along the south side of Sylvan Avenue. Next slide, please. Slide 3 shows a figure showing the proposed alterations and demolitions to the first floor, and as well as conservation strategies. Next slide, please. This figure shows the proposed second floor with the 2-story garage and the construction of a partial second-story addition. So the proposed development is the proposed 3-bay 2-story garage replaces the existing 3-bay carport. The new garage has the same location and orientation as the existing carport, and its relationship to the house is maintained. The existing concrete walkway and canopy that connect the carport to the house will be maintained and continue to provide covered access between the two structures. The partial second-story addition to the house is above the easternmost portion of the house and is located to minimize its visibility from the street. A narrow second-story link will connect the rooftop addition to the second story of the garage. The link is located to the east to maintain the separation between the garage and the house, ensuring that the two volumes read as separate. The remainder of the roof will be used as a rooftop terrace. The guardrails for the rooftop terrace will be glazed and set back from the front wall of the house to minimize their visibility from the public realm. The conservation strategy, the house will contain several interior heritage attributes that have been included in the statement of significance and which will be conserved. Generally, most heritage attributes will be retained. Examples include the sunken living room, the fenestrations, interior beams, rusticated stone wall and fireplace, and cedar wood, tongue, and groove ceilings are all being conserved. The conservation of interior heritage attributes within a private residence also mitigates the heritage impact of the proposed alterations. The cladding material for the new construction will be contemporary and compatible with the vertical wood, tongue, and groove cladding of the house and its modernist aesthetic. The scope of work will also involve in-kind replacement of deteriorated portions of the existing wood cladding and replacement of the original original windows with new windows. While the windows are original and the heritage attributes of the property, they are deteriorated beyond the point where they could be reasonably repaired. Some exterior beams and posts will also be replaced as a result of their state of decay and to facilitate the development of the new garage. Next slide, please. This figure shows the proposed north and south elevations. Next slide, please. And this figure shows the proposed west and east elevations. In conclusion, heritage planning staff are supportive of the application to alter and remove some heritage attributes. To facilitate the proposed development, the existing carport will be removed and replaced with a new two-story garage. The partial second-story addition located above the house and connecting the second story with the garage via an enclosed link is being constructed. Heritage planning staff support the proposed conservation strategy and are of the opinion that the proposal has been designed to conserve the cultural heritage values, attributes, and character of the property. Interior heritage attributes are rare within heritage designations, particularly within residential properties. Staff are appreciative of the owner's willingness to conserve and maintain the design intent of both the inside and outside of the significant property and are consistent with the applicable heritage policies. And thank you.
Thank you very much. We have two speakers on this item. First is Shahid Kankar. Please correct my pronunciation if I've got that wrong.
Yes. Hi.
Hi, you have 5 minutes.
Okay. Actually, thanks very much to everyone, especially Colleen. Looking at in details. As Colleen mentioned, I personally love the heritage attributes, right? So I discussed with my architect that as much as possible we will keep it, but it's a very old house. Few things have to be changed. And about the garage, it's an open garage, right? And I'm not a young guy anymore, so when I drive home at night, I have to take care of my own safety as well. There are a lot of animals around. So that's why we wanted to, change the garage. That's the only thing that I believe is different than what is right now.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Shahid? Seeing none, we have also Edith Lau.
Hi everyone.
You have 5 minutes.
Sure. So thanks everyone for joining a meeting with us today. So we actually preserve all the attributes that the heritage suggests. The only thing that we actually want to propose is actually the second stories on the above the garage. That's the only space where we actually make the changes. Any attributes we are actually more welcome actually to preserve the heritage regarding what you guys propose. So if you have any other suggestions for us, we're willing to work with it. So
thank you. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So beyond that, I don't have any other questions about proposals here.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Ms. Lau? Mitchell.
I was just wondering if there were any alternatives that were explored for the program that's on the second floor. Was there a sort of bungalow format that was looked at to kind of keep things low and similar to the existing massing, or yeah, any other options that were kind of explored as part of this process?
So because for the second because for the space like on the existing house, for a client we kind of think it's like it's a little bit small for our clients. So that's why we originally plan actually lock down the house and we build a new one. Just because like we going for heritage. So like the only thing alternate plan we have is making addition on top of the house right now.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there was any option explored whether it was in addition to, let's say, the side or the front yard, like next to the carport, or any kind of alternative like that.
Not too much because I can't really move forward the house, or I can't really extend to the back. So pretty much like putting on top of the second floor is the maximum I can do for on the garage.
Okay.
Thank you, Eden. Are there other questions of her? Seeing none, are there questions of staff? Seeing none, is there discussion amongst ourselves? Thank you very much, Colin. Yes, Alex.
Well, I went by the site several months ago, and there is, as I think was stated in the staff report, a fairly long driveway. So you don't get sort of hit in the face by the second story addition. I think it still presents as a modernist house. Whether James Murray would have designed it that way, I don't know. But I think it's infinitely superior to the idea that was mentioned. We just wanted to knock the house down.
For sure.
And I think that is to be commended. Maybe that's a small recommendation, but I think it's true. And I also think the design has been tried to conform to the original intent. And I also like the fact that the interior features are going to be maintained. So, it's not ideal, but it could have been much, much worse. Thanks.
Thank you, Alex. Is there other points of discussion amongst ourselves? Seeing none, I have a staff report with recommendations before us. Would anybody care to move the recommendations in that report? Matthew, all those in favor? Motion carries, all are in favor. Hey, we got that one on the first try. Yay.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you so much.
That's good.
Thank you very much. Are we ready for point 4?
Hi, Julia. Yes, we can move back to item 4.
Perfect. Let's do that. So we've been through our speakers and our staff. So we have a motion to be put up before us. Please and thank you. That the Toronto Preservation Board recommend that the Senior Manager, Heritage Planning, Urban Design, City Planning consider the following when reviewing the conservation plan. A, the underlying brick on the east elevation be re-exposed as part of the rehabilitation, and that the 3 distinct lines of coining be retained and highlighted to depict the evolution of this building. B, the original storefront design be reinstated based on documentary evidence where available. And C, match mismatched bricks where appropriate. So Adam has moved the amendments. Are there discussion points? Adam, you are muted.
The word original in point B, could it be original or early storefront design, because we do know there is a large addition? Or we could say Victorian. We specify Victorian or pre. Mary or Heritage, can you assist with this? Will original get us into trouble here, given the age of this building?
Can you explain a little further what you mean?
There are some photos showing a wooden storefront with high ornamentation, including stained glass and carved wood. It looks to be late 19th century, based on the stained glass patterns. This building is certainly mid 19th century. the original storefront from the mid-19th century may not exist in archival records, but we certainly have archival records of the Victorian era. Would it be original or earliest storefront design available?
I think early is probably better.
Okay.
And that gives a range of possibility.
That's too early then. Yep, thank you.
Yeah.
So we know that there's going to be a slight tweak, which I think we can do quickly. Stay on this item. Is there other points of discussion about the amendment? And Mitchell, please.
Yeah, I think this is exactly the reason that we shouldn't get into this kind of thing. I think it makes things far too specific for our position, and I think that staff will obviously these are standard steps that staff asks applicants to look for: archival documentation, and if there's a reason to restore it to, they will ask them to do so. I just think it's a bit of it's a bit too much.
Thank you, Mitchell. Other points of discussion? Adam.
Does it help to have community input on these matters, saying, hey, the early storefront design was flagged by Preservation Board as being something of importance?
Sorry, for community later on, I just unpack the sentence for me, please.
When these details are specified, does it help later design elements to say, hey, this was flagged by Preservation Board as something of his significance?
Well, in some ways it is flagged at a public meeting where we're talking about sort of the consideration of it. It's a question of the level of consideration that you want to give it. It's a fair point to raise, Adam, 100%, but I think there's probably different valences upon which that input and that opinion can be adjudicated. Are there other points of discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion to amend put before us by Adam, which is just now on the screen with the wording. Give everybody 10 seconds. Does that look right to you, Adam, just to make sure? You happy with it? Okay, great. So Adam's moved that. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Alex, Adam, Jeff, Matthew, Karash, and Paul. All those opposed? Julia and Mitchell. The motion to amend carries. We now have a staff report with recommendations as amended before us. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, would anybody care to move the recommendations as amended? Adam. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Everyone's in favor, the motion carries. Thank you very much. And now I don't have to say mismatched and mixed again, because that is quite the tongue twister. Moving on to our last item today. PB 22.6, 33 and 37 Maitland Street, alterations and demolition to heritage attributes at a designated property under Section 33 and 34.11 of the Ontario Heritage Act. We have a staff report. As a reminder, this has a confidential attachment to it. So we'll have a public report. If we want to move forward with anything and have discussion about the confidential, then we have to close the meeting. And that will be a whole protocol there. But first, the public presentation from staff. Hi, Neil.
Hello, everyone. Through you, Madam Chair, I will be presenting on item PB 22.6, alterations to and demolition of heritage attributes to a designated property under sections 33 and 34.11 of the Ontario Heritage Act. So yes, there will be a public and confidential component to the presentation today, as it addresses matters subject to litigation. An application that has been appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal So I'll make a public presentation describing the proposal, and I will turn it over to the chair to initiate the in-camera session to provide staff analysis and recommendations of the city solicitor. Next slide. So this slide shows the location of the development site, which is located on the south side of Maitland Street, east of Yonge Street, and west of Church Street in Toronto's Church Wellesley neighborhood. Next slide. This slide shows the development site currently occupied by a 3-story apartment building, 33 Maitland Street, shown on the right, and an 1858 house in the style of a Georgian villa with Italianate influences, 37 Maitland Street, shown on the left. As shown in this image, this is a small site. Next slide, please. So the property at 33 Maitland Street contains a brick 3-story apartment building on a T-shaped plan. Most of the building extends back from the street to the rear of the lot. The building features front gables, which contains half-timbered finishes and open eaves with exposed rafters, both of which have been subsequently covered. The property at 33 Maitland Street contributes to an understanding of the social and developmental history of the area north of the city core in the early 20th century, while the area was being redeveloped as a zone concentrated with apartment buildings. Within a 2-block stretch, Maitland Street is occupied by a total of 9 apartment buildings dating from 1910 to 1930. City Council included the property at 33 Maitland Street on the Heritage Register February 7th, 2023, and issued a notice of intention to designate on July 25th, 2023. Next slide. So this is the property at 37 Maitland Street, and it contains a 2-story Georgian-style building with Italianate influences that was constructed as a residence for Samuel George in 1858. Characteristic of the Georgian style, the property displays a formal but understated symmetrical red brick facade, as well as a low-hipped roof with tall symmetrical chimneys at each end. Italianate influences include long main floor windows, the flat central portion of the roof, segmental arched and curved window openings, the glazed and paneled double doors, and the polychromatic buff brick detailing. Extensions on the side and rear of the house are finished with a compatible detailing and matching materials to that of the main portion of the structure. A small side entrance porch with a distinctive curved slope roof further contributes to and individualizes this design. The Samuel George residence also contributes to an understanding of the social and developmental history of the area north of the city core in the mid-19th century pre-Confederation, when sparsely populated area, as it was at the time, consisted largely of detached residences and small villas. This property is the only one of its type on Maitland Street. The property at 33 Maitland Street, the residence, was included on the City of Toronto's Heritage Register, or the City of Toronto's Heritage Inventory, sorry, now the City's Heritage Register, in 1974. City Council issued a notice of intention to designate on July 25th, 2023. The designation bylaw for both properties, there's one designation bylaw, was enacted on November 8th and 9th, 2024. However, the designation bylaw was appealed to the OLT on December 22nd, 2023, with regards to the apartment building. Next slide, please. So here's the proposed site plan showing the proposed mixed-use tower. As you can see, there are outdoor exterior amenity areas proposed at the rear of level 3 and the west side of level 4 and level 7. And you can see the 37 and 33 Maitland Street there. Next slide, please. The settlement offer proposes a revised built form that incorporates both heritage buildings in the base building of the proposed tower. Due to the appeal and settlement, there are no renderings, only massing models. Next slide. and so we get into the confidential portion. So I'll stop here.
Just a very brief question about the public presentation. Just
No, wait,
no.
please.
Okay.
Just hold on. We have no speakers.
It was the name used for the property.
That's fine. I'll give you your time, Adam. Just let's all take a breath.
Okay.
Adam, you have a question of staff on the public portion?
Yes.
There we
The name Samuel George House, everything I've seen it calls the William Galbraith House. Was there a change?
Sorry, Adam. I was in the designation bylaw for the properties.
Yep.
It was constructed as a residence for Samuel George,
Mhm.
and so I was using that term. In the designation bylaw, it doesn't say the William Galbraith House, but
I trust the designation report. The listing bylaw is so old. We've often wondered about the name William Galbraith. He lived there at some point later on, but this is very interesting that we found the earlier name. So thank you, or that you guys found the early name. Appreciate it.
At this point, do we want to, my fellow members, move into closed session to hear the confidential portion of it and have discussion about that matter alone? Yes? Yes. Adam, you want to move into closed? So in order to do so, I need a motion. Sorry, can I see all my board members, please? It's just easier for the hands. Thank you. I need a motion to move into closed session, please.
Give us one moment, Julia.
To move into closed, we're just voting. We're all saying yes. So we'll move into closed session now. Does that work for you, Tanya?
Yeah, we just need to display the motion. Give us one moment.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Take advantage of this pause to say that this week is Toronto Public Service Week, and it has been all week in recognition of, city staff and clerks and volunteers on the board. We could take this moment to say thank you. We might not always get it right, but everybody's trying and working together to make this city a really lovely place. So thank you to clerks that keep us running, and me on the straight and narrow, and to Heritage Planning staff and all other members of the city. It's much appreciated. It's not perfect, but it's our city.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. I have to leave the meeting as I sent you an email yesterday. Sorry.
Weekend.
Good day.
Julia, we're having a little technical issues with our motions. So we'll move into closed on your word, and then we'll work to get the room closed and all of that for the secure closed session.
Absolutely. So we're going to ask the clerk, because we did all agree to move into a closed session of the meeting. So the clerk is now going to close the meeting to the public and only provide access to members and appropriate staff for the closed session portion of this meeting. And in addition, the live stream will be suspended until the closed session is over. Members and staff, I would also remind you to arrange your surroundings so that there's nobody else nearby to observe part of the closed session. What we discuss in confidential and closed session stays in confidential closed session. And I will just wait for Tanya now.
Okay, Madam Chair, we're ready to resume in open session now.
Thank you very much. So we have before us a staff report with recommendations. Is there any others? And we have it, any other discussion in the public portion? Tanya, if you could put up the amendment, just the language so I can read it out for the record. Thank you. That the Toronto Preservation Board recommend that the Senior Manager, Heritage Planning, Urban Design, City Planning consider the following when reviewing the conservation plan, the additional conditions set out in the confidential attachment. This has been moved by Adam, so thank you. All those in favor of the amendments, please raise your hand. I have Adam, Matthew, Jeff, Alex, and Paul. All those opposed. I've got Mitchell and Julia. Motion carries. I have now a staff report with recommendations as amended before us. Would anybody like to move the recommendations as amended? Adam, all those in favor, please raise your hand. And I see all the hands. The motion carries. Thank you very much, everybody, for your time today. Thank you to clerks and legal and heritage staff. Everybody have a wonderful weekend and enjoy some sunshine. It's adjourned.